Hello, and a very warm welcome to everyone joining us. In a world that is constantly evolving, strategy is often seen as something reserved for organizations, frameworks, plans, and boardroom discussion. But increasingly, it's becoming clear that strategy is far more personal. It shapes how we think, the choices we make, and how we navigate in an increasingly uncertain world. Today, we explore a simple but powerful theme: strategy beyond the boardroom. Why strategic thinking is the most critical life skill today. Let's explore what it truly means to think strategically, not just at work, but in life. And to lead us through this conversation, I am delighted to introduce our host, Neelakshi Mukherjee, Senior Director, People First and Talent, a seasoned leadership facilitator and executive coach with over 30 years of global experience. Neelakshi has led large-scale people transformations, including her role as head of HR at large-scale GCC setups. Her expertise spans leadership development, succession planning, and talent nurturing across industries and geographies. Through her work, she has helped organizations build high-potential leaders, strengthen teams, and create cultures that enable performance and growth. Blending deep strategic insight with hands-on coaching experience, she brings a powerful and practical perspective to leadership, making her uniquely positioned to lead a conversation that goes beyond theory into real-world relevance. And with that, it's now my pleasure to introduce our guest for today, Jeroen Kraaijenbrink, a globally respected strategy thinker, author, and educator. Jeroen Kraaijenbrink helps leaders and individuals think clearly about what matters, make better choices, and build lives in organizations with genuine direction. His strategy for life work translates two decades of strategy expertise into something more personal, frameworks that work not just in boardrooms, but in the everyday decisions that shape a life. His work draws on an unlikely combination: strategy, cognitive psychology, humanism, martial arts, and the rule of Saint Benedict: rigorous, practical, and deeply human. Jeroen holds a PhD in industrial management, has authored 6 books, including the Strategy Handbook and the 1 Hour Strategy, and teaches at the University of Amsterdam. He is co-founder of Strategy.inc and co-creator of the Big Five of Strategy, a research-based framework for navigating complexity and change. He has worked with leaders and organizations across industries for over 20 years. Welcome, Jeroen. As we begin, we encourage all our attendees to engage actively. If you have questions or reflections during the session, please share them in the comments on the LinkedIn live stream. We will be very happy to have them addressed. Let's begin what promises to be a thought-provoking conversation. Over to you, Neelakshi.
Thank you. Thank you, Shagufta, for those wonderful, kind introductions and a warm welcome, Jeroen. It's been a pleasure engaging with you over the last few weeks to be able to come to the finale of Sharpening the Saw, which is our podcast. So it's always exciting to go back to the basics, right, Jeroen? As in, why? Why is it important? So let's start with that basic question: that why do you think strategic thinking is a critical skill, maybe not of the future, maybe right now? So over to you.
Good. Thank you for the warm welcome, and great to be here. Maybe let me rephrase the question immediately to start with. It's not just strategic thinking, it's also strategic acting. And I think we'll get to the difference probably later in our conversation.
Yeah.
It's not just because I think so. 'Cause of course, I'm very biased. I've been in strategy my entire career. So of course, I think that strategy is important for organizations, for leaders, for everyone.
Sure.
But the reason we are saying this, and the reason I'm saying that I'm truly convinced, is that research by others shows this. And specifically, I want to refer to 2 studies by the World Economic Forum, one from, I think, 2024, the other from 2025, so quite recent. And one was a study amongst chief people officers, So the people in charge of HR, of people, of leadership development, and so on. And what struck me was kind of the core conclusion of that report was, so they asked a lot of questions, I assume, but one of the core questions was, okay, what are the most important skills for the next couple of years? And 100%, so every single one of the persons they spoke with ranked business acumen and strategic thinking and acting in the top three. And even more, 90% of them ranked it as the number one competency that they thought their people would need. So that's one very important sign that it's not just me who believes this, or not just us at Strategy Inc. or with the Big Five of strategy, but respected research by the World Economic Forum. And another report, they did something similar, but asking more to executives, like, okay, a more nuanced question, like what are the critical skills for 2030? And if you look in that study, like there's kind of like 100 skills they review, and the top 25, I think like 80-90% of them, I would label them as strategic skills, strategic competencies. So it's so obvious. And one more part of the answer, if you allow me, because why is this? Why is this? Because the research shows, so that's one way of answering the why. The other is things are changing. They have always been changing, by the way. They have always been uncertain and complex and so on. But also today, and maybe especially today, and maybe especially like the coming years, given global instability and climate and all of those themes. And in a world where change is kind of the default, what becomes a critical skill? Being able to reflect on yourself, being able to act and be strategic, to kind of reinvent yourself. And one more driver here is artificial intelligence, of course. And we see that that's exploding now, and it's taking over or complementing or taking over significant parts of work that we imagined were very human. But now we know this is not the case.
And this is probably at some stage.
Yes, and not just in kind of the simple work, but advanced work in marketing, in human resource management, even in therapy, and in the medical world. So everywhere, and that leaves the question: okay, what then is a human skill, and how do we kind of deal with that? So that's where strategic thinking and strategic acting are the core set of skills that I think not just leaders need, not just the boardroom, not just mid-level, not just team leaders, but everyone in every organization. So that's a pretty bold claim, I think, but I think that's where we are now, and why this is so important.
No, I do think it's far from a bold claim, Jeroen, because we work very closely with organizations globally, right? And we work with their competencies, we work with what the leaders need, what the future is looking like. And you're right, strategic thinking definitely comes on the top of the chart, not just one of the competencies, but it is one of the top of the chart competencies, which not just at the leadership level, but I think we're trying to drive across levels, right? So which brings me to a different perspective, really, but an important one, that while we know that organizations do need strategic thinking, I would just like to transit to another aspect, which is individuals, right? Now, organizations are made of individuals at the end of the day. So and you can't be thinking strategically at an organization and not thinking strategically as an individual. So here's my transitioning question, that at an individual level, what does strategy look like beyond goals and plans, beyond something which you would do otherwise any which ways? So yeah, that's something which I'm really interested to know your perspective on.
Of course. So do we have another hour to explain this? I'd love to talk. Of course, I'd love to talk about this. And I think it's important to first kind of make a difference between kind of having a strategy, so that's the content part, and being strategic.
Absolutely.
So what I focus on is mostly being strategic. So let me first quickly answer the having a strategy part of the question. The difference from from goals, plans, and so I think
Mhm,
that's what we see in organizational life as well. There's a lot of talk about strategy and implementation, while in fact what people do, or what consultants do, or what the textbooks talk about is analysis and planning. So
That's
we
right.
analyze, we do our SWOTs and our pastels and our D-step and whatever the framework we use.
Yeah.
And then we turn that into targets and objectives and OKRs and OGSM and all the frameworks there, which interestingly skips strategy. And for me, strategy is kind of what's your logic for creating and capturing value. So how do you, as an organization, create value for customers, for others, through your products and services, through what you can offer, and how do you do that in a way that is different from others, unique, sustainable over time? So and how do you do it in a way that you also generate returns?
Yes.
And that very thinking about how do you create value and how do you capture part of that value, that's an essential question for everyone on this planet. So very much at the individual level, like what's your contribution? How do you use your skill, your strength, your knowledge, your experience, your expertise, your network? How do you bring it in? How do you turn that into work, into a job, into a product, a service, anything? And how do you create value for that? With whom? With for which customers or for which organizations, for which people, for which communities, for maybe for the planet, for anyone or any other system or organization, or and then how do you get something in return? So
Yeah.
the very same logic works there as well. So that's the what is strategy, and why having a strategy on the individual level is equally or even more important than at the organizational level. When we then move, like, what does it mean to be strategic?
Yes.
And it's definitely much more than goals and planning. And in the work that I've done with my Strategy Inc. co-founder, Timothy Teriyaki, we have created what we call the Big Five of strategy, which is a competency framework
Okay.
where we did the research. There's kind of a strong conceptual framework. We did the empirical research. It's based in science, and so we checked all the boxes for that, and we discovered there's kind of five core competencies, and I think it's useful to kind of review them very quickly to get a sense of what being strategic really means. So the first is what we call grasp the present. That means understanding yourself, understanding other stakeholders, understanding your position in the world, in the system, in the organization. So grasp the present. Second is shape the future, being able to envision, to kind of see the picture where the world is moving and where you should be moving. So at an individual level, that means, for instance, that you can kind of envision, like, what does my job look like in 3 years from now, or maybe even longer? And that is a responsibility that we cannot just leave to HR or to executives. It's, I think, everyone's own responsibility.
Absolutely.
So grasp the present, shape the future. And then that's the thinking side. So also here, kind of connecting this to my answer to your first question. On the thinking side, we have grasp the present and shape the future. And then on the doing side, we have move the system, which is kind of the activation, mobilization, getting people on board, activating them. So the kind of a change management, mobilization competency. And we have deliver the results, which basically that's the closest to kind of the goals and planning part.
Yeah.
It means kind of prioritization, planning, resource allocation, and follow through and all of that. So that's number four. And then number five is adaptation. So adapt to change.
Absolutely.
And that's one thing. Also in organization, strategy is not this kind of long-term static thing anymore. It needs to be adaptive.
Yes,
It needs to be
absolutely.
iterative. And of course, also not completely, but you need a good balance. But those are
Yeah.
the five competencies. There's 20 sub-competencies underneath, and I won't be talking about those here. That's far too much detail. But that gives, I think, a good sense of what being strategic really means for an individual.
Yep. yeah. That's very, very insightful, the way you have really crafted it as a journey, right? So I'll pick up one of the competencies that you spoke of about future sensing, right? Which is your second, I think, in line.
Mm.
And you called it interestingly. Now, that's where my second question, my next question rather emanates from, Jeroen. We very briefly touched upon the volatility. Yes, volatilities have always been a part of our ecosystems, but probably not as much as we look at it today, right? Like we started a new normal, let's say back in 2023 or 2020 around the pandemic, and it's not new anymore, but it's not normalized yet, right? So it's a new normal, which has been continuing for a couple of years now. So given the extra volatility in situations where preempting the future is becoming so much more difficult, how do you think this capability of future sensing by individuals, and that's one of the values they bring on the table, that how agile are they to be able to preempt the future? How do you think this capability is getting challenged in today's world?
Very, very valuable question. And it's interesting you call it future sensing. Like we call it shaping the future. And I think that's maybe even the essence of the answer
Right.
is it's not a stretch. Being strategic is not about being able to foretell or foresee the future. Of course, and that's what we, as part of Grasp the Present, that's where we actually include like do trend analysis, look at the patterns, because that's the future already happening today. That's what
Right.
data, that's what trends are all about. So when we
Absolutely.
think about the future, it's being able to kind of envision. So that's much more a creative competency
Yes.
to kind of see alternatives, to kind of be aware that that the future may not be the same as the past, probably will not be the same. So that's one part of it, is in specifically in that competency, being able to kind of envision, to think
Sure.
bold, to think out of the box, to think radically. And also that's part of that competency as well, being willing and able to actually make bold decisions
Yes.
and live with uncertainty, live with incomplete, contradictory information, and yet be decisive. So that's all needed. And at the same time, we have adaptability as an important competency as well. So being able to kind of set a direction, like this is where I think I should be going, move in that direction, monitor what's going on, and course correct when things are different than you expected. I think that's the way. The alternative, kind of completely kind of responding and adapting, is not very workable, because I think that's what people are doing too much. It's kind of they feel at the mercy of all the things they hear, they see, all the things coming to them, and then they feel kind of lost and kind of passive and reactive and not in charge, not in control in setting their own direction.
I love the way you kind of corrected future sensing to future shaping. I think that's where the trick really lies, right? And how you're preparing yourself for the future today without really having to be at the mercy of what really happens, and then try and adapt and, bring in the other forces together. We have a lot of young audience today with us, Jeroen, and young would mean as young as campus to corporate, some who are in the early years, who have just about started, about 1 to 5 years of experience. So we have a very mixed audience today. Now, keeping this audience in mind, right? I would again, maybe at the cost of repeating myself, but I would again want you to kind of, give me some perspective that when I'm approaching my career in my early days, do I approach it as a strategist, or do I approach it as a performer? There could be a very thin line, but then I would still want to break it down for us for the benefit of this audience that I just spoke about.
Oh, definitely. I think it's not even a thin line. It may even be a gap, or kind of like a big difference.
Yes.
For me, as a performer, we probably think in terms of jobs,
Yes.
careers. So you try to fit in. You try to see, okay, where am I suitable? Like what kind of job, what kind of vacancies, what kind of how can I prepare to be a good fit for that vacancy? So you might have a clear idea of your career. So your first job is probably not what you have in mind, but you think in terms of jobs, like fixed, given jobs that are offered to you. Of course, I'm putting it a bit black and white, but I think that helps to
No, I think
figure
that
out the
helps for
difference.
them to decode as well. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's fine.
I think because that's what we've been doing for a long time, and that's also where you see there's other research, like the unemployment gap in the past, like where for college graduates, university graduates, unemployment was typically lower than average. Now, since a couple of years, especially since since AI is coming up, that is flipping. Like unemployment amongst graduates is higher than average. That's a clear sign that they're kind of not really fitting in well. I think that's where the being a strategist becomes so important, because you think in terms of, okay, how can I create value? What's the value I can create? How does my profile, my experience, my personality, my qualities, how can I turn that into something valuable, which could be in a job, but you come, I think, rather than applying to fit in, you come more prepared, you come more confident, probably also
Programmed, so to
about
say, right? As
yeah,
to what is
more
expected out of the job, and that's what I'm going to be doing, maybe doing it to the best of my
yeah.
ability, but I'm still pre-programmed.
Yes, and here you kind of take control and kind of say, okay, this is what fits me. This is what fits my kind of my experience, my background, and of course, not as a fixed given, because that will change over time because you build up more
That's right.
experience. Looking at my competencies, my networks, the things I find important, the kind of the way I make money, the risks, the cost, and all of that. And then I concluded this is not my career. Maybe for part of it, but I want to have, with my skills, with my background, I can have a more profound impact on the real world. So that's when I started kind of declaring myself a consultant from one day on the other, and got my first client and experience, and so on and so forth. So from then on, I created my own career. And sometimes I have never been good in kind of being in a job. So I was always kind of an outsider, like a freelancer, like an external or an entrepreneur, consultant, a coach, or whatever the role. But I took control of my own career and did it my way. And I think that's the big difference between, starting your career as a strategist and a performer. And not even just starting, but maybe it's still easiest to start as a performer and kind of get your first job. But with the strategist mindset, I think that's a crucial difference, because then you think about, how would I like to live my life? Because that's another angle you bring in. You're not just someone employed. It's not just a work. That's part of your life.
Right.
And the way I look at my own career, my journey is like, I can't separate between private and business. It's me. And how do I do that in a way that gives me joy, that gives me money, that allows me to kind of use my skills to contribute, and all of that. Very long answer, I know, but it's an important, very important question, I think, for
And it's
especially
a very
people kind of
important
entering
answer.
the labor
Yes.
market.
That's right, Jeroen, and that's a very important answer. And I'd just like to, it was not long enough, so I'd like to stretch it a little more. So just one related question to it, and we can have it short, but I think it's important. For these kids or these career starters who are looking at you today, if you had to give them a starting point, right? So because you have traversed a distance. I have been working for 30 years. I work closely with, people when they're starting to strategize on their organizational goals, etc. So maybe it's a little more relatable than the boy who has just stepped out of college and is in his first job. So what is that starting point? What is it that they need to look inwards, because that's where they'll start, right? What are those one or two things which you could recommend that they look for within themselves? And then, of course, they can look at the outside world, etc., so that they get a nice start to this.
Yeah, so part of it is a bit self-serving, because some of the frameworks I've developed is specifically for that question. So I have what I've called the strategy sketch, which is in the
Right.
strategy handbook, and the 6M model in my other book, The 1 Hour Strategy.
Perfect.
Both are basically the same framework, but one more granular than the other. And what it does, it helps you to kind of look at yourself also as an organization or a team, but also as an individual, and ask kind of the key questions. And part of it is, and maybe I'll just briefly go through the 6M because that's the
Sure.
shortest and easiest and the neatest version of it. One question is your means. So what do you bring to the table? Also, as a start, like right after college, it's not just your degree.
Yes.
It's the hobbies. It's your personality. So it's your network. It's the people you know. So what's your means? I think that's an important question to ask yourself. Write down, reflect on it. So those are your strengths. The other one is kind of the market, like who could benefit from what I do, like which organizations, which people, which companies. So what's the market? Who are your potential customers? Like who can benefit from what you're doing? Who's your competition? Who are the other people doing this? So that's the market. Then we have the money side,
Yes.
which is, okay, how do you think about creating a revenue? Is it being employed, or can you monetize things in other ways? So maybe I think it's quite popular now to have different channels.
Yes.
Like have not just one job, but be kind of a portfolio mini entrepreneur with having that's what I do as well.
Sure.
Risks and costs. So how do you make sure that the choices you make, what are the risks, what are the costs? For me, for instance, one risk or cost was being stuck in a tenured job for the rest of my career, because that's where I was. I could just stay there because I had a permanent contract, so I could easily stay there. That was pretty frightening to me. So that's the money side. So we have the means, the market, the money, and then there's the meaning. What is important to you? What do you care about? What are the issues in the world you want to contribute to, or solving them? How do you want to be what's your legacy? And I know these are big questions. You can revise them, but I think once you have completed your degree,
yes, to
you
be
know that.
sensitized about it. Yes, absolutely.
Of course, you have an inner drive.
Yes.
And I think this is so important, because just doing it for the money is the wrong reason. You need to I think we need more idealists and
we do.
Clearly with the drive to improve this world and solve all the problems that previous generations, including mine, have created.
Yes.
So that's the meaning part. And then we have the momentum part, which is what's happening around you that you can step on, what is helping you, what's hindering you, what are important developments and how can you leverage those and step on them so that they help you rather than that you see them as threats or downsides.
Right.
And then the last one is the center of the framework, which I've labeled the magic. It's how do you link all that? And that's basically what is it that you are creating? What's your product? What's your service? What do you offer to the world? So thinking about these 6 questions. So what are your means? What's the market? How do you deal with the money? How do you create meaning? How do you leverage the momentum? And what's the magic that you are creating? I think that would be an excellent start for anyone thinking about their careers.
No, I agree. And this is such I would think if one gets down to doing it, it could open up so many, I would say, angles for them to look at their careers, and not just at a very one-dimensional angle that persists today, that I have got this job, so I got to make most of this job, and then I move to the other one, which pays me more, right? So I think that's a beautiful framework and angle, and thank you so much. I'm sure my young viewers would really, and old, would equally take advantage of this.
This is also when you're 60, it applies as well, or 70. It's constantly.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's agnostic of the age and the stage of your career you're in, but it so much so helps these youngsters, because they are at that start, and their future, as usual, looks very, very volatile and bleak as we speak now. So I think that's a wonderful direction. If they can absorb and adapt to, it would be wonderful for them. A question that I've been waiting to ask, right? Uh, I bumped on this 1 hour strategy when I go through your profiles and your work and all of that. Now, it was easy for me to read through it when I was doing the research, but it's always more exciting and intriguing to hear it from the person. So break it
Of
down for
course.
me. What is
Yes.
this 1 hour strategy?
Yeah. So for listeners, of course, the 1 hour strategy is one of my books, and it's kind of a short book, more a story, more an idea than kind of a textbook or a guide. And the idea I sketched there is like how companies or organizations can adopt strategy in a way that everyone is involved. So it's very much synergistic with all the things we've been talking about, like the competencies that you need, the strategy. So we talked about strategy as value creation and value capturing. That's
Yeah,
what you need as an individual, as a team, as an organization. We
sure.
talked about the 5 competencies you need, the big 5 of strategy. But you also need, for organizations, you need a system where people are allowed and facilitated in doing all of that. And that's what the 1 hour strategy book is basically like. It's explaining that idea. And what it says, and that's the 1 hour rule, everyone should work on their strategy in an organization, everyone, but the degree to which is
Yeah,
different.
of
So the
course.
1 hour stands for 1 hour per day for executives.
Mm-hmm.
And for many executives that I know, that's much more than they do because they are kind of absorbed in day-to-day operational stuff.
Absolutely.
So for them, this is kind of a way to kind of reclaim
Yes,
that they should be actually actively working on strategy,
absolutely.
like at least an hour a day. For managers, so kind of mid-level, team-level managers, it's the 1 hour per week. So it's a less important task in terms of volume, but you also need to kind of
But you
reserve
need to
block
do
time
it.
for it, 1, 2
Absolutely.
hours every week. And then the third level is for kind of the non-leadership positions, kind of employees that have not a leadership position, 1 hour per month. So that
Mm-hmm.
means every month at least spend 1 hour thinking about your strategy as an individual along the lines of the 6M questions that I've just shared with you. So in
Mm.
that way, it's 1 hour per day, 1 hour per week, 1 hour per month, and of course, yes, these are very rough
Sure,
indicators. But I
sure.
think a good suggestion for how systematically, as an individual and as an organization, you should
Mm.
be working on your strategy.
No, absolutely. I mean, yes, it can be varied, but then it's a great indicator that you can keep in mind depending on the levels you're in, and especially when you're looking at
Yep.
the organization at large. So interesting, and I would encourage readers to go and look at these elements that you've put in the book, which would be, I'm sure, far more detailed and intriguing than just how we put it right now.
A bit
So
more,
that
yes.
I'm very encouraged to go and read it now, and which I shall. Uh, Last but not the least, uh, is there anything like over strategizing, and how do we draw the balance? What are
Mhm.
our quick reminders that you're spending way too much strategizing and not way too much acting? So, and I would not want to give words in your mouth. I would say, how do you draw the balance?
Yes, there definitely is such a thing. That's kind of overthinking it. And I think that's what we see
Yes.
in organizations as well. The word strategy itself already kind of has it in it because as soon as we start adding strategy to something like strategic HR, strategic marketing, it kind of makes
Mhm.
us feel, oh, this is more important. Now we need to be serious. Now we need to do analysis and write long documents. That's not the point. So the way I think about strategy is completely different. It's and so in a sense, there is no over strategizing. If you live the 5 competencies, so the grasp the present,
Mhm.
shape the future, move the system, deliver the results, and adapt to change,
Right.
it
Mm.
becomes your way of
Yes.
basically your way of being in the world.
Yeah.
Because this applies to your job, your work, but also
Exactly.
privately. Like
Mm.
understand where you are, reflect on where you stand as a family, envision the future, make conscious
Exactly.
choices there,
Mm.
being able to mobilize your kids if you have them, your family, your friends, deliver the results. Of course, being on top of making progress and adapting all the time. So it's kind of a life skill.
Yes.
So that's where I think You overdo it when you overthink it, when you conceptualize it, when you kind of put it into words and documents and plans and all of that. You can't overdo it if you really absorb this as kind of your second nature or even your first nature, that becomes the way you're living.
That's right. That's right. No, I love the twist you got to it. That it's not really a twist. It's what we've been speaking of in the last 30 minutes, really. That how do we make it a part of our life, a part of our intrinsic abilities in whatever we do, whether it's life at large or our profession or something else like family, the way we strategize how to be better positioned, let's say, as a human being in the next few years or at large. So that's a beautiful answer, I would think, Jeroen. And thank you so much. I feel a little more enlightened today, and I feel very, very encouraged to go and read that book because I'm sure I'll get some more knowledge nuggets which are practical, which are implementable, and definitely would bring an upward curve to the way we're living lives. So thank you so much for your participation. Thank you so much for your detailed answers, despite the time we had, and would be really looking forward to many such interactions, Jeroen. It was an absolute pleasure having you with us.
Thank you very much. And it was a pleasure to answer all the very good questions.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Have a great day.